أكرمنا بمعرفة العلم وزين أخلاقنا بالحلم يا أرحم الراحمين. Ameen, Ameen. Pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses this attempt to learn, study one of the furud ayn, which is the fiqh of Salah. And I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes us of those who strive to gain fiqh of deen, an understanding of our deen, and that He makes that a means for us to grow in our iman and our relationship with Him. Allahumma ameen. We're going to be getting started with where we left off last time. We were speaking about one of the central topics in fiqh of Salah. You guys remember what it was? Anyone who was here? What were we talking about last time? What is it? Raise your hand. We were talking about arkan as-salah. Many of you might not know what that means. So in pillars of salah, the pillars of salah, that's what we were talking about. Specifically, how many pillars are there? Raise your hand for anyone who is here. Raise your hand. I want someone to help you. So you answer too many questions. What is it? Huh? The book says 18, but we said something about the book. There's something repeated. The actual number is what? Not 15. So someone said 13. There you go, 13. 13 pillars for salah. The one that's repeated is tuma'nina, and that's pausing for a moment in the position. Because like we said, you can't have consistent motion in salah. There needs to be at least a pause that breaks the first motion from the second one, right? You guys all with me? You following? Or you don't understand what tuma'nina is? You don't understand what it is? All right. So what's not tuma'nina? If someone is consistently moving from position to position, standing up, down, ruku', Sami Allah and Hamida, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. This is no tuma'nina. What's tuma'nina? I'm standing up, Allahu Akbar, at least one Subhanallah. So Allahu Akbar, Subhanallah. Sami Allah liman Hamida, Subhanallah. You see, each transition is being broken apart. You understand now? Yeah, so I'm not consistently moving. I can't consistently move during salah because I need to give each rukun and each pillar its right. And the minimum of that is for me to pause in it just for a moment, right? So that's what tuma'nina means. Now, of course, do I say Subhana Rabbiyal Azim only once? I shouldn't. I should say it more because the sunnah is to do it more than that. But these things, these additions are not requirements, right? Like we said, we're talking about the requirements right here, right? So there's 13 pillars. How many, what's the breakdown of the pillars? Who can raise their hand and tell me? What's the breakdown of the pillars? There's 4 categories. What are they? Raise your hand. Go ahead. There are actions. How many actions? Okay. And then, what's next? The 5 statements. Okay. So 6 and 5, that makes us 11. And then what's left? One thing that's conceptual, that's the order. And then one thing that's in the heart, which is the intention. So those are the 4 categories. Heart, intention. Actions, 6 things, right? Statements, 5 things. One conceptual thing, it's an idea. What is it? To do the thing in order. To do salah in order. That's very good. Try to memorize this. This is the basic essentials. This is the breakdown of salah. In terms of statements, what are the pillars in terms of the statements that we said? Who knows? Right? Who knows? What are the pillars in terms of the statements? Go ahead. What is it? The first takbir. What do we call that? Takbirat al-ihram. Right? The first takbir, Allahu Akbar. What is it called? The takbir of ihram. It's close to the word haram, right? Because it makes after it what was before it halal, now it makes it haram, right? You can't talk, you can't walk, you can't eat, you can't drink, you can't do any of that stuff. All this stuff is haram now after takbirat al-ihram. That's why they call it takbirat al-ihram. So that's the first statement that's required. What's the second statement that's required? Raise your hand. Huh? Go ahead, sister. Yeah. Fatiha. Very good. What's the third statement that's required? Raise your hand. The last tashahhud. Very good. Jazakallah khair. What's the fourth one? What's the fourth one? Raise your hand. Go ahead. Salah an-Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Is that from the book or from your memory? Huh? There's this nice line of poetry. You know what it says? لَيْسَ بِعِلْمٍ مَا حَوَى الْقِمَطْرُ مَا الْعِلْمُ إِلَّا مَا حَوَاهُ الصَّدْرُ. True knowledge is the one that we're able to transition to our hearts. Try to memorize this stuff, guys. Inshallah, you'll get it down. Just try to memorize it. Because, you know what, if your knowledge, there's a funny story, Imam Ghazali, this happened with Imam Ghazali. Imam Ghazali was traveling, and he was with a group. And they were raided by highway robbers. And he had a ton of books with him. And the highway robbers wanted to take all his books. And so he said, please, anything, just don't take my books. So then he said, why are you so attached to these? He said, I spent so many years writing this and putting this stuff together. And now if you lose it, it's going to be gone. And then he said to Imam Ghazali, what kind of knowledge is this that gets lost just because someone takes your book, right? So he learned a big lesson from this to commit everything to memory after that. So again, that's what they say. If you want it to become true knowledge, I need to make it transition to my heart. I need to put some time into that. How do I do that? Study before, study after. I'm preparing for the lesson before, and then I'm reviewing the lesson after that. That's how you're really going to get a really good takeaway from this type of gathering. Try to do that. Try to do that as best as you can. You will find it very, very useful, right? So that's the story from Imam Ghazali, and that's the statement that they say about memorizing knowledge. And so now let's go back to it. So the fourth statement is Salah ala nabi, right? So tashahhud only refers to the first part. This is all in the book. It's going to come in the book that we have. If any of you don't have it, we still have copies, by the way, right? After tashahhud, what do we say? Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. The end of tashahhud is Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Up to here, this is the fourth pillar. What's the fifth pillar? First salam. First salam is the fifth and last pillar. And that's why just the first salam, not the second one. We take this from hadith. They're not making this stuff up. The Prophet ﷺ told us, pray as you see me pray. So there's tons of hadith that teach us how the Prophet ﷺ prayed. So what's the benefit of knowing that the first salam is a pillar, the second one isn't? If something was to happen that would ruin your salah between the first salam and the second one, then your salah is good to go. You're fine. Everything's fine. As long as you made it to the first salam, you made it to the finish line, right? So to say. So anyway, that's 5 statements. 6 actions. What are the 6 actions? Who can help? Right? Standing. Standing in the beginning of salah. Right? What else? What else? Okay, so we have standing, we have ruku'. These are easy things, guys. Ruku', what else? Sujood, but there's something before sujood. I'tidal, rising from ruku'. Right? Then sujood, then we don't call this i'tidal, we call this jalsa bayna sajdatain. Jalsa bayna the sitting between the 2 sajdas. Right? And then the last one? No, taslim is a statement, right? Taslim is a statement, right? Huh? Not action. Taslim al-ula is Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, right? That's words. So sitting in the second sujood, that's what it is. So sitting in the second sujood. So again, القيام في الفاتحة ثم الركوع ثم الاعتدال ثم السجود ثم الجلسة بين السجدتين ثم الجلسة في التشهد الأخير. These are the 6 actions, right? These are the 6 things. Everyone with me? And we started going into the details of each one. We went over details for niyyah. We went over details for takbirat al-ihram, right? Now, everything that's not in what we mentioned, they're recommended things in salah. Now, now if we do this, I want to see how salah should look like. What should it look like? So, first off, I face towards the qibla. How should I be standing? They say that for your standing, if you really want to follow the sunnah, it is, there's differences of opinion, but I'm telling you the Shafi'i school on this because there's just so many differences of opinions on some of these details. Your feet should be aligned with your shoulders. Your feet should be aligned with your shoulders. What does that mean? Can you help me out here? Would you mind standing right there? Would you mind? Or you don't mind? Tfaddal. Or you do mind? Tfaddal. Can you stand right here? All right. So stand as though, you could face them. All right. Come to the center a little more. A little more. All right. Stand as though your feet are aligned with your shoulders. How are you going to stand? Right? You would. Very good. Now, this is, some people spread out your legs. Some people do this. They want to make it extra far, right? This is not appropriate. Don't do this. Some people, they'll spread it, it doesn't happen too much here, it depends on where you are. Some people, they'll get very annoyed that the person next to them keeps on putting their feet together, right? So they'll try to make up for it and they'll go like this, all right? They'll pray like this. Don't do that, right? Don't keep on racing the other person's foot, right? You don't want to break the sunnah by trying to touch the other person's foot. The al-asl fi sufuf al-taras, right? Feet should be foot to foot, shoulder to shoulder. But if that doesn't happen, because people follow different opinions, that's fine. So some people bring them closer in. Yeah, this is the Hanafi school, to make the distance of 4 fingers between the feet, just like that, right? 4 fingers. The Shafi'i school, they say it's approximates of 1 shibr, like that, which makes it align with the shoulders. So that's about standing. Then when you do takbir, how do you do it? You raise your hand where your tip of your fingers are to the half of your ears. Do that, just like that, right? And they say that so many people, they'll do it different ways. They'll do it like this, they'll do it like that. No, just like this, right? And then what do you do after that? You put them directly under your chest, not on your chest, but there are other opinions that say you would lower them lower than that, right? Like the Hanafi school would be a little bit lower. But the Shafi'i school, they say, put your hands underneath your chest, on top of your ma'idah, huh? What is it? Not on top of your belly button, on top of your gut. Your gut. Right underneath your chest. So right underneath your chest, on top of your gut. So do that. Some people do this. Have you ever seen this? They'll swing their arms like this. Like that? Have you ever seen that in the beginning of prayers? That's an opinion out there. It is an opinion out there. Some people do that, like that, and then they'll do this. In the Shafi'i school, you do it directly like that. How do you do it? Put your hands across. You put your right on top of your left. You grab your wrist with your right hand. You grab your left wrist with your right hand, just like that. These are all sunnahs. If you don't know them or you don't know some of them, it's completely fine, right? Then the other thing that we have in the very beginning of Salah is there are certain utterances that you should make. What are these utterances? We have dua al-iftitah, the opening dua. وَجَّهْتُ وَجْهِي لِلَّذِي فَطَرَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ حَنِيفًا وَمَا أَنَا مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ. And there's other du'as, they're in the book, inshallah. Then you do أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم, then Bismillah and Al-Fatiha. Then, what do you do after Fatiha? You could say. I'll call you back up in a little bit. What do you do after Fatiha? What happens after Fatiha? What should you say? Ameen, right? Ameen, right? What does it mean? What does Ameen mean? You guys know? It means Allahumma astajib. Ameen means Allahumma astajib. It's a ism fi'l, as they say, and its meaning is, Oh Allah, answer our prayers. Oh Allah, answer our prayers. Allahumma astajib. Is it required to say Ameen? No. It's not in the pillars that we mentioned, right? Knowing these pillars is critical because it'll save me from a lot of confusion. I could try to learn sunnahs as much as I want, right? Dua al-iftitah and the way I should position my hands and everything like that. But these are all sunnahs. Good? Right? What's up? Go ahead. Yes. So you don't need, as we learned last week, you don't need to utter the intention, right? نويت أصلي فرض الظهر لله تعالى. You don't need to say that with your tongue. If you want to and it helps you, but you should say this before you say Allahu Akbar, of course, not after, of course. So you say it before you raise your hands, okay? You can find all the recordings, but was there something else? No, Allahu Akbar comes first. Saying the intention is not required. It's fine if you want to, but it's not an expectation. You say Allahu Akbar, and then after that, there is a dua that we call the opening supplication. After Allahu Akbar, and then we say A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, then we say Al-Fatiha, then after that we say Ameen. Do we have to say Ameen out loud? Difference of opinion. Shafi'i school will tell you, you should, right? Ameen, like we said, it's a recommendation, it's not a requirement. After Ameen, what do? We recite a surah, right? Is it required to recite a surah after Fatiha? Is it one of the pillars? No. So the answer is, it's not required. It's recommended? Yes, very recommended. Good. If you want, all right, if you could recite a full surah, that's better. But if you can't recite a full surah, even one verse, that would be sufficient, right? So that's in terms of, and then what do we do after that? What do we do after that? In what we're learning, you will raise your hands like this again and go down to ruku'. You'll raise your hands and go down to ruku'. We said last time how the position of ruku' should look like, right? You want to come back and show us again? Face them. Come over here. Bismillah. So, face that way, and say, put your hands over on your gut, over each other, and say Allahu Akbar, bringing your hands up to the midway point of your ear, and then go down to ruku'. All right. We said that ruku', there's an optimal position for ruku'. What does it look like? I'm sorry if it's difficult for you to do this, but your back should be straight. And your eyes should be facing where? Your sujood, not here. Face the sujood over there. So your face should be facing forward a little bit, right? And this should be straight. And where should your hands be? On your knee. How should they be on your knee? Should you be gripping your knee? No. They should be clasped together like this, facing downward. Just like that. Clasped together, facing downwards. Not spread apart like this. And not grabbing your knee like that. Facing downwards. Tamam? What's the minimum point of ruku'? What's the minimum point of ruku'? That is going down far enough for the palm of your hands to touch your knees. How far is that? Right now they're touching your knees, right? So you're doing the minimum of ruku' right now. What would be the maximum of ruku'? For you to make the back flat. You see how the back isn't flat with this? So this is the minimum of ruku'. Do you actually need to touch your kneecap when you're making ruku'? You need to touch your kneecap? Is it a requirement? That's not a requirement. It's not one of the pillars we mentioned. This is a recommended thing. What I said, what you gesture. But you need to go far down enough to be able to touch your kneecap. Got it? All right. Now, what's the thing that we said is prohibited in terms of ruku'? That is for you to bring your chest, make it face forward, make your chest face forward, and you bring your rear end downward, like you're hunching down like this, you see? Right? Like that. That would be a prohibited stance for ruku'. You know how like they stand in baseball? Like for example, if they're at they're waiting for the ball, just like that. This is prohibited, right? Jazakallah khair. If they have a medical condition, then in this case, we're going to tell them, sit down. Or, if, or go to the extent of it. So most likely if they're standing, they're not going to be able to, they're going to need to sit down anyway. How are they going to go down to sujood? فهمت علي? Most likely if they can't do ruku', they will not be able to do sujood, because it's much more involved. Sujood, you're going to need to bend your back a whole lot more. So medical condition very likely won't apply, because this brother is most likely going to be sitting down anyway because he can't do sujood. Like we said with ajz, we spoke about ajz a little bit. We're going to get into it later. If you could do part, then do part, right? So that's ruku'. You have your hand up? Go ahead. What's the ruling for the basmala? So the Shafi'i school states that Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim is a verse in Fatiha. So as such, it needs to be recited just like Fatiha needs to be recited. There is a madhab that says that it should not be recited because it's not a verse from the Quran, right? That's the Hanafi school. It should not be recited at all. The Maliki school is in between. They say it is a divider between surahs, but it should be recited because there is a difference of opinion about its hukum, so it should be recited, but they'll tell you recite it silently to yourself and then recite Fatiha out loud. So that's why you'll see some shuyukh, they'll say Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim to themselves, and then they'll start reciting out loud Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. This is in between. I don't know what the Hanbali school says. Yeah. Everything that's not one of those 13 is a sunnah. Of course. It will not affect your validity of your prayer in any way. Tamam. What do we do when we rise from... So now we know how to do ruku', right? What do we say in ruku'? We say, Subhana Rabbi al-Azim. The sunnah is, the minimum of the sunnah is to say it 3 times, and this goes up to 11 times for you to be able to say Subhana Rabbi al-Azim. There's some other things that you can say in this position, as we're instructed in ruku' to do ta'zeem of Allah Azza wa Jal. We glorify Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in ruku'. Look at this beautiful hadith. This hadith, it says, this hadith describes tuma'nina. Alright, so look, there's one hadith that says, Afwan? It's in another book. Yeah, we're going to go to our book in a little bit, inshallah. So he says, وَإِذَا رَكَعَ أَمْكَنَ يَدَيْهِ مِنْ رُكْبَتَيْهِ. Alright, so أَمْسَكَ رَاحَتَيْهِ عَلَى رُكْبَتَيْهِ. So the hadith says that you should grab your knees. You should grab your knees, right? Or you should put your hands on your knees, right? And then it says after that, the Prophet ﷺ says in the hadith, أَسْوَأُ النَّاسِ سَرِقَةً الَّذِي يَسْرِقُ مِنْ صَلَاتِهِ. The worst thief is the one who steals from his prayers. قالوا يا رسول الله وكيف يسرق من صلاته. قال لا يتم ركوعها ولا سجودها. He doesn't complete its ruku' or its sujood, meaning that he doesn't pause in it. He's very quick to transition between the movements of prayers. This was described in the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ as a form of theft from prayers. All right. There is also some evidence to say that instead of squeezing them together, you can make some space between your fingers. There's some hadith that also suggests that for ruku'. There is this other thing here. So لا تجزئ صلاة الرجل حتى يقيم ظهره في الركوع. Your prayer is not valid until you you make your back firm in ruku'. Now this is, of course, again, this is actually interpreted as kamal, not as minimum. Like we said, if your back is bent, it's still going to be accepted, but it's not complete. So here the hadith says, إِذَا رَكَعَ أَحَدُكُمْ فَقَالْ سُبْحَانَ رَبِّيَ الْعَظِيمِ ثَلَاثًا فَقَدْ تَمَّ رُكُوعَهُ وَذَلِكَ أَدْنَاهُ فَقَدْ أَتَمَّ رُكُوعَهُ. So here the hadith says, if one of you was to do ruku' and say Subhana Rabbil Azim 3 times, then you've completed the sunnah in ruku'. But this is the minimum of it, right? It goes up to 11 times, as I said. And there's another dua that you can say, Allahumma laka raka'at wa bika amant wa laka aslamt khasha'a laka sam'i wa basari wa mukhi wa azmi wa asabi wa mastaqallat bihi qadami. These are additions from the sunnah. It's also a place of there's a hadith that says كان يكثر أن يقول في ركوعه وسجوده سبحانك اللهم ربنا وبحمدك اللهم اغفر لي. It's said that the Prophet ﷺ would say in his ruku' and sujood, سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك اللهم اغفر لي. Subhanaka Allahum, Subhana means exalted. And Rabbana wa bihamdik, O Allah, you're exalted and you're the one of praise, O Allah, forgive me. That's what it's saying. There's another one that's more commonly known, Subbuh Quddus, Rabbul Malaikati wa Ruh. This is something that's recommended to say in what? Ruku' and sujood. Those are some of the ad'iyah. There's tons of dua. If you guys ask in the WhatsApp group, if you can remind me, I can share some of these du'as with you, with their hadiths, so that you can try to memorize them. Right? So after going from ruku', we go to i'tidal. What do? We raise our hands and then we put them at our sides. This is according to the vast majority of scholars. So again, when we are in ruku', we're going up. Why do I raise my hands like this? The Prophet ﷺ did it. Is there a meaning behind it? Some of the scholars suggest something to reflect on, right? We want to there's a lot of symbolism in Salah. What's the symbolism in bowing and prostrating? What's the symbolism in raising my hands? One symbolism, they say, it's as though you're throwing the dunya behind your back. You're keeping all material things, all material distractions behind you as you're raising your hands like that, right? So when you rise from ruku' to Sami Allahu liman hamidah, you rise like this, and then you put your hands at your sides. This is according to the vast majority of scholars. Have you ever seen anyone put their hands back like this? Have you ever seen anyone put their hands back like this? This is according to a minority opinion. There's a small minority hold that this is what you should do, but the vast majority say, no, you don't do that. You put it on your sides. And again, all of these are sunan in salah, recommended things. Then we say, what do we say? Sami Allahu liman hamida, Rabbana. Some of them say, وَلَكَ الْحَمْدِ, or رَبَّنَا لَكَ الْحَمْدِ. Both are narrations. Both are narrations. And then there's a longer dua to say, رَبَّنَا لَكَ الْحَمْدِ, all praises to you, right? It's very interesting. If you think thoughtfully about Salah and how it's positioned, there's a reason why sujood is the very last action in Salah. So now all of this is praise, forms of praise. I'm standing up, reading Quran, then I'm bowing down and I'm glorifying Allah, then I'm rising up and I'm praising Allah, and then guess what? Now I'm ready to make dua. You guys think about that? Ever think about that? So there is a deliberate build up from the beginning of the rak'ah to the end, to sujood. Right? So anyway, Rabbana lakal hamd. There's a longer dua. حمدا كثيرا طيبا مباركا في ملء السماوات وملء الأرض وملء ما شئت من شيء بعد أحق ما قال العبد. All right, so وكلنا لك عبد. So there's أهل الثناء والمجد لا مانع لما أعطيت ولا معطي لما منعت. This is a long dua. What's the story behind it? The story behind it is that there was a companion who said this as he rose from ruku'. And the Prophet ﷺ asked, who was the one who said this dua, he called out, who's the one who said this dua during Salah? And one of the companions said it was me. And then the Prophet ﷺ said to him that the angels hastened to try to write it down. إِنَّهُ ابْتَدَرَ ذَلِكَ بِضْعَةٌ وَثَلَاثُونَ مَلَكًا يَكْتُبُونَهُ. So he said, this shows you how blessed a prayer it is. The angels were so excited to write this dua down that this man innovated. He innovated this dua. He didn't actually innovate it, but it teaches you that the Prophet ﷺ did not condemn him for saying a dua in prayer that wasn't taught to him. But and they actually use this as evidence. So in Salah, can you make your own du'as that are not in the Sunnah? Yes, you can, no problem. You make these du'as, it's fine. But anyway, when the Prophet ﷺ concurred his du'a, it became part of the Sunnah to say this du'a. So it's recommended for you to learn this du'a. Again, another du'a that I could share with you guys. I think it's in our book. If it's not in our book, then I can send it to you in the WhatsApp group. Okay? Then after i'tidal. So i'tidal is considered a short pillar. It's considered a short pillar. What do? We go down to sujood. All right. Now, when we go down to sujood, where do we go? Hands first or knees first? Where do we go? Why as you wish? Whatever is easier for you. I guess in a sense, but there's a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that says that the Prophet ﷺ prohibited that we do buruk kaburuk al-ba'ir, that we kneel down as a camel kneels down. Now the big question is, how does a camel kneel down? Huh? Knees first. Well, it depends. So does the camel have 4 knees? Or are we imagining the camel like a human being where the 2 front ones are like the hands and the 2 back ones are like the feet? Like, how are we imagining this? So there's actually, I'm not actually joking, by the way. So a camel goes down by bending its knees. Well, we're going to call them knees, the 2 front knees. And then it bends the 2 back knees, right? So now they debated this. Some scholars, they said that the camel first puts down what's forward. And what's forward from the human being when we go down to sujood is what? Hands. So put the hands down first. But some of them said no. The camel goes down necessarily with its knees. It has 4 knees. I have 2 knees, right? It has 4 knees. It bends the joints and it just sits down. It's not like a human being standing up, right? So the Prophet ﷺ is trying to tell us we need to go down on our knees first. You see how both of them they have a logical argument? So one group said the camel goes down with its knees, and the Prophet ﷺ is telling us go down with your knees. The other group said, well, no, it uses its front 2, so the Prophet ﷺ is telling us to use our hands first before our knees. Now, what does the Shafi'i school say? The Shafi'i school says, use your knees first, because it makes more sense. The Prophet ﷺ is telling us to look at how camels go down. They go down on their knees, right? No camel goes down on its hands, right? So that's the Shafi'i school says use your knees. But if you were to follow the other opinion, then fine. Now here's the thing. You need a level of physical control of your body to be able to go down on your knees first, right? So many people can't physically do it, right? For one reason or another, back pain or something else. So if you end up going on your hands first, inshallah, no problem. No problem. Because the worst of it, this nahi is not lit-tahrim. It's not a nahi that means something is haram. The worst of it means that it's makruh, right? But there's both perspectives. Knees first or hands first. And like you said, ultimately, do what you want, but that's l-ikhtilaf al-ulama, not because of anything else. So anyway, so that's the... now when we talk about sujood, all right, so that's how you go down. When we talk about sujood, what does it include? Of course, we know it's a pillar of salah. It's one of the actions. It includes 7 parts of your body. It includes your hands. This is obvious. It includes your knees. That's obvious. How much is this so far? 4. All right. It includes your forehead, right? That makes it 5, right? And it includes your feet. That makes it 7. The hadith says this. The Prophet ﷺ says in the hadith, أُمِرْتُ أَنْ أَسْجُدَ عَلَى سَبْعَةِ أَعْظُمٍ. I have been commanded to prostrate on 7 limbs. He says, عَلَى الْجَبْهَةِ, forehead. And he didn't name the nose, but he says, عَلَى الْجَبْهَةِ وَأَشَارَ بِيَدِهِ عَلَى أَنْفِهِ. He just pointed to the nose. And then he said, وَالْيَدَيْنِ, the 2 hands, وَالرُّكْبَتَيْنِ وَأَطْرَافِ الْقَدَمَيْنِ, and the tips of your feet. Right? Now, what they say here is critical. وَالْعِبْرَةُ بِالْيَدَيْنِ بِبَطْنِ الْكَفِّ. Right? What's considered as your hands? This is your hand. This needs to be on the floor. This, no. This, no. This, you can't do a fist, right? Sometimes people, when they're holding the mushaf, they'll do that. This is not appropriate. You can't do sujood like this. You can't do sujood like this. Your hand needs to be on the floor, right? Where do you put your mushaf? Put a chair next to you. Put the mushaf on the chair if you're praying sunnah, right? So your hand needs to be on the floor. Now, what about your nose? Why did he point to the nose? Well, this is the big thing that they whole speak about when they talk about this, is the nose here. They say that it is something that needs to be fulfilled or should be fulfilled. Not fulfilling it is makruh, because they say وَضْعُ الْأَنْفِ sunnah. Putting the nose on the ground is a sunnah, a recommended act. Meaning that if someone, now I'm not telling you guys to pray like this. No one should pray like this. You know, like how a 5-year-old prays, where they'll be like putting all the pressure on the top of their head and they're like dancing around with their nose and it's not on the ground. Don't pray like that. But if someone didn't put their nose on the ground, their salah it's going to be valid, because it's makruh to not place on the nose on the ground. And that's why they say he named the 7 limbs, but he just pointed to the nose to show that it's sunnah to do that. Now, another thing this is a very critical thing to pay attention to. In sujood, your feet need to be bent. Your toes need to be bent, facing the qibla. Facing the qibla. Many people, they won't bend their toes. According to at least the Shafi'i school, I don't know all the opinions, this would invalidate your prayer, right? Just putting the back of your foot or the top of your foot, whatever you want to call it, just putting the top of your foot on the floor, like lying it down. You guys can visualize what I'm saying? You could visualize what I'm saying? Lying your foot down without bending your toes is going to make your prayer invalid, right? So that's what they say here. So first off, they say, what are the conditions in sujood? Let me list them out to you. So the first condition is to do sujood on these 7 limbs that we stated. Then the second one is كشف الجبهة وتمكينها. يجب كشف الجبهة عند ملامستها الأرض. And he says here, شكونا إلى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم حر الرمضاء في جباهنا وأكفنا فلم يشكنا. The hadith says, look at this hadith, it's authentic, it's in Sahih Muslim. We complained to the Prophet ﷺ about the heat of the sun on our foreheads and hands, and he didn't give us an excuse. So he said, you need to put these limbs on the ground. ويجب على المصلي أن يمكن جبهته من الأرض ويتحامل عليها تحاملا بينا. Right? So here, the forehead, this is the forehead. Right? This is the forehead. Does the full forehead need to be exposed? No, it doesn't. Even if part of it was exposed, like say if someone was wearing a cap and part of it was covered and then part of it was uncovered. As long as part of the forehead's uncovered, this is fine. But if someone was to pray like this, with nothing showing from like if someone was to pray like that, that's funny, right? If someone was to pray with this, that would not be acceptable, right? Now, or if someone wants to be smart, right? Like the masjid's carpet is nasty, and I wear a hijab, so you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do sujood on my hijab. I'm going to wear a long hijab, I'm going to put it out in front of me, and I'm going to put my forehead, and I'm going to breathe the scent of my hijab, because the masjid's carpet smells like feet. I'm not saying it does, but say if it does, if someone did that, that would not be okay. You can't make sujood on your hijab. If you want, you could get a little like sajjada, little carpet that's just for your forehead, go ahead. If you really want to do that, you can do that, no problem. Or if you want to grab a towel from the masjid, as a bathroom, and put it, that's fine too. What's up? They need to move their hair to the side. Yeah, move their hair to the side. Make sure that part of the forehead touches the floor, right? So they say, and you need to press down, right? So you can't get like an inch away and just like keep your head off the ground, like I'm close enough, I'm sure Allah will accept it. I'm not going to touch it, but I'm just going to be like an inch away. Can't do that. Let me just finish this and then you'll ask the questions. All right. وَيَجِبُ أَن يُصَلِّي. All right. So وَلَا يَجِبُ كَشْفُ الْيَدَيْنِ وَالرُّكْبَتَيْنِ وَالرِّجْلَيْنِ. Do you need to, like if someone was wearing gloves, like someone wears gloves, مثلا it's cold, they want to pray with, can you pray with gloves? No problem. You could pray with gloves, and of course you shouldn't expose your knees anyway, or your feet anyway, or you shouldn't expose your feet if you're a female. If you're a male, that it's indifferent. And they say the other thing is التنكس وهو رفع الأسافل على الأعالي. You need to make sure that the lower part of your body is higher than the upper part of your body. So like say if someone, for whatever reason, say like if we have some steps here. I'm praying normal position. I'm not talking about someone who's praying on a chair. I'm not someone who's excused and is praying on a chair, that's different. But say if we had some steps here, and someone wanted to do sujood on the steps, what's going to happen? Their upper body is going to be higher than their lower body. That's not allowable. The lower body needs to be, for it to be sujood, the lower body needs to be higher than the upper body. You guys got that? You understand that? So that's the next one. And يُشْتَرَطُ أَلَّا يَسْجُدَ عَلَى ثَوْبٍ مُتَّصِلٍ. That's why I said you can't make sujood on your hijab. You can't make sujood on any garment that's connected to you. Like say if you're wearing a hoodie, you can't make sujood on your hoodie either. But like say if you have a hat, right? I'm going to take off my hat and I'm just going to put it on the ground and I'm going to make sujood on my hat. Fine, no problem. Or a scarf. It's more about the clothes that's on your body, not about clothing in general. So if I bring a scarf with me to the masjid, like or whatever, a jacket or any or a hat or anything like that, I can make sujood on that, no problem, right? 1 second, let me just finish and then I'll take the questions. And then you need to pause in that for a moment. And then there's a lot of sunan. So saying Allahu Akbar as you're going down, saying all of the Allahu Akbars except the first Allahu Akbar, there's sunnahs, right? It's not required. It's all sunnahs. Now, how should I make sujood? How should I make sujood? Now, كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا سجد جافى عضديه عن جنبيه. كان So the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم كان إذا سجد فرج بين رجليه. There's different narrations on this. So my feet from the back, should they be together or should they be apart? There's conflicting narrations. That's why some scholars, they say keep them apart, but the more correct narrations is to keep them together. Your feet from the back, as you're doing sujood, be together instead of being apart, right? Your upper body, as he says in this hadith, the Prophet ﷺ would separate his wings. This is provided that you have space. Don't forget the Prophet ﷺ was the Imam. Now, don't come into Salat al-Jama'ah like getting into territorial wars with the people next to you. Please don't do that. Wallahi, it is very inappropriate and it is annoying, right? For someone to be in, some people, they'll spread their wings, so to say, and their elbows will be on one brother here and the other brother here, right? Don't do that, right? So, in fact, first off, this is for brothers. They say that for sisters, it's recommended to do something different, is to limit the spacing out of your body, make it inkimash, sort of inkimash, or coming in together. And in terms of sujood, it says, all right, so actually, look at this. There's a hadith that tells us, this hadith tells us, in terms of the hands, clasping them together like this. So what are you going to do with your hands? You're going to spread them apart, or keep them like this, or like that, or what are you going to do? This hadith tells us, كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا ركع فرج أصابعه وإذا سجد ضم أصابعه. So let's make a slight modification. In ruku', keep them slightly apart, not clasped together like I said initially. And وإذا سجد ضم أصابعه. So clasp them together in sujood, spread them apart a little bit in ruku'. All right. So these are, and in terms of tasbih, what do we say? Subhana Rabbi al-A'la. 3 times as a minimum, 11 times as a maximum. And there's other recommendations to say in terms of sujood. Sujood is a very humbling position. It's the nearest position we have to Allah. أَقْرَبُ مَا يَكُونُ الْعَبْدُ مِنْ رَبِّهِ وَهُوَ سَاجِدٌ. It's the closest position you have to Allah. So it's recommended to do sujood, to prolong your sujood and make a lot of dua in sujood. Now let's take the questions that you have. I think there was a sister over there who had her hand up first. Go ahead. Because of hadith, they say that the sujood needs to be on the ground, and if it's connected to you, it's not from the ground. Even if it's not from the earth of the ground, it needs to be something disconnected from you, because the sujood ala al-ard, you need to do sujood on the ground, not on something connected to your body, right? Yeah, so that's the reason. Sorry? It's invalidating. You need to have the palms of your hands on the ground. You can't have the fist on the ground. If you're holding a child, in sujood, would you stay holding them? How are you going to do sujood without your hands touching the ground? So normally, the Prophet ﷺ held a child in prayer. When he would do sujood, he would put the child on the ground in the place of his sujood. So basically, I'd be doing sujood on top of the child, and then put the hands on the side like normally you would do. So they're not going to step on the child if you do that, because you're on top of the baby. You got it? Does it make sense to you? Yeah. All right. What other questions do we got? Take off your jacket and put it on the ground and pray on your jacket. Or take towels from the... Did you say a bar? Is that what you said? Huh? A park. Oh, a park. I'm sorry, the question wasn't connecting. All right, so if I'm at a park, if I have some towels with me, or I could take my jacket off and pray on my jacket, anything. And muhim, let me just take it off my body and pray on it. Right? Or if I have a hat, I could put the hat. Right? So, you got it? Yeah, go ahead. Yes. You're going to flip over, Habibi. Yani put your head on the bottom step and put your feet on the... Unless you're good at gymnastics, I'm not sure that would work. What other question we have? What other question? Yeah. So look, there's a hadith that says, لا تتركوا فرجة للشيطان. There's a hadith that says, don't leave gaps for the shaitan. But some people take this understanding to a very much extreme. So the default, there's ikhtilaf between the scholars about this issue. Does it need to be foot to foot? Or is it more important for it to be shoulder to shoulder? So there's ikhtilaf, and this ikhtilaf needs to be respected. Right? We should not go extreme in our understandings. If the person next to me is not of the opinion that I need to spread my legs out very far, then let everyone do what they want to do. It's fine. Don't worry. Bil'aks, when you insist on these things, you might be letting the shaitan in. Because for some people, they focus on it their whole salah. Their whole salah is, all right, I need to move my feet an inch more. Man, they moved their leg over 2 more inches. I need to move it more now. And more and more and more. And the salah is going to finish and I'm focused on my feet. So, بالعكس, الشيطان داخل. So, who else had their hand up? Go ahead. Wait, they'll fully cross their arms. How? Like this? Instead of like this? I don't know if there's another opinion that says that. Sometimes we'll be forced to do that because it's tight and it's no problem. So like this, you need more space. Like this, I want to make space for the people next to me. So if it's because of space restrictions, it's okay. But does a madhab say to do this? I don't know offhand. But the Shafi'i school says to do it like this. Right? Yes. So the most favorable thing if you're praying alone is to spread your arms. Your hands should be at shoulder length, right? As you're doing sujood, they should be at shoulder length, not at your head, right? At your shoulders. You should be very careful not to allow your forearm, because there's another prohibition that says don't do sujood like dogs, right? Don't put your elbows on the ground, right? So, and then it should be at shoulder length and it should be spread out. Yeah. Not like this, right? Not like this. Like this. Yeah, like that. Yeah. Good? All right. Let's go on. And then inshallah, because we want to finish this section. All right. Now, what's the next thing after sujood? Al-jalsa bayna sajdatain. Sitting between the 2 sajdas. And this is another short sunnah. There are recommended du'as to say in it. They're in the book. And what you should do in look at this, all of the sittings of salah, we have, there's 2 words. One of them is called iftirash. What does iftirash mean? It is when you sit on the inside of your left foot. When you sit and you bend your right foot facing towards the qibla. Right? You guys all with me? Huh? For some people, not for everybody, for some people who have physical inabilities, again, this is from the sunnah of salah, it's not requirement. But for those who are physically incapable, khalas, what are you going to do? But for many people that, maybe it'd be hard in the beginning, you get used to it. Many people could do that. So you just sit on it, you sit on your, you sit with your rear end on your left foot, and your right knee, your right heel is bent under your rear end facing towards the qibla. You guys all imagining what I'm talking about? You guys know what I'm talking about? What's the other sitting? This sitting is more difficult. Iftirash is actually easier than the other sitting. Tawarruk is easier than the other one. So iftirash, So we have iftirash and then we have tawarruk. Now, if the other one is where I put my buttocks or my rear end on the ground, and then I bring my left foot underneath my right foot. My right foot is bent, and the left foot is underneath. This one's more difficult, right? This one's more difficult. So we have tawarruk, and then we have iftirash. So all of the sittings of salah, except the last, you guys can't imagine what I'm saying. It looks like it. You can't imagine it? All right. Do we, Muhammad, you could do it? Muhammad Arif? Or khalas, you could do it. Face this way.
The second one or the first one?
Do both of them. All right. This is the first one. Yes. Now the second one. Do the second one. Yes, that's the second one. So this is the one. The second one is the one that we do in the end of salah. That's called tawarruk. We do this in the end of salah. Iftirash is, do the first one again. You see how he's sitting on his left foot, the inside of his left foot, right? So this is iftirash, right? Jazakallah khair. But this is again from the sunan of salah. It's not one of the requirements. It should be a small jalsa, and that's the end of the first rak'ah, right? All right. Is everyone clear? Everyone good? Tamam. So this is, and then when we fast forward, what about, all right, so now we at this point, there's some salahs that have 2 tashahuds, right? The first tashahhud, is it a pillar of prayer? Answer, no, it is not. What does that mean? So what if I miss the first tashahhud? Should I go back to it? The answer, no. Why? It's not a pillar. If I miss it, then I do sujood sahw in the end, the prostration for forgetfulness, and we're going to talk about this, right? If I'm about to miss it, like so now here the first tashahhud, when I'm rising from tashahhud, going up, if I remember as I'm halfway up, I could sit back down, no problem. But if I stand up fully for the third rak'ah, that's it. I don't go back to tashahhud. And that's because it is not a pillar of prayer. Good? We only really have one last thing in these pillars, and that is the last tashahhud. Right? The last tashahhud is, here's the following to note about it. There are different narrations in terms of the wording. You might learn different wordings of these. All right, so there's some of them that say at-tahiyatul mubarakat was-salawatu at-tayyibatu lillah. And then there's some of them that start at-tahiyatu lillah was-salawatu at-tayyibat wa ashhadu, and then it goes on to say there's another one that says at-tahiyatu lillah az-zakiyatu lillah at-tayyibatu lillah. It's an uncommon one. As-salawatu lillah, assalamu alayka ayyuhan nabi. Anyway, these are, where are they taken from? They're taken from different narrations of hadith. They're taken from different narrations of hadith. Learn one of them and memorize it, and that should suffice you. So, at-tashahhud, this is one of the arkan of salah. It needs to be done in order for your salah to be valid. And after tashahhud, we say Salah al-Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad, wa ala ali Muhammad, onward. This is what we call as-salah. So, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad here. Then we have كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. Again, this whole thing, we call it as-salah al-Ibrahimiyya. This is the Abrahamic prayer. It is different than tashahhud. It is not required. It is a sunnah. The required part of it is as-salah al-Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Good? What about as-salah al-al? This is from the higher recommendations of salah. And then there's certain ad'iyah there's certain du'as that you should say before you say salam. اللهم إني أعوذ بك من عذاب القبر ومن عذاب جهنم ومن فتنة المسيح الدجال. Right? Go ahead. اللهم إني أعوذ بك من فتنة المحيا والممات. So, like we said, the first tashahhud is sunnah. Should you say as-salah al-nabi wa ala al-al? Yes, up until there. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad, and then you stand up. But it's all recommended, right? Mish min arkan as-salah. So you say in the first tashahhud, you don't say the full Abrahamic prayer, right? We're clear on that? In the first tashahhud, what do you say up until? You say until Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, Ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad. And then you stand up, right? You don't say the rest of it. Tamam? And then we have the first salam and then the second salam. The first salam, look, so for when we say salam, how do we say salam? Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. And then we transition back. So when do I turn my face? After I say the meme from alaykum. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. And then I face the front again. And assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. I don't add barakatuh to it. According to the opinion of most scholars, you don't add barakatuh. Is that clear for everybody? So you don't say, move your face forward to the right. You don't move your face to the right from the beginning. You don't say, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. No, you say, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. And then, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Right? That's how you do it. These are all recommendations. They're not requirements. But that's pretty much how it is. Anyone have questions? Go ahead. Do you have to, if you're like late or something? Yes. No, you shouldn't do it at the same time. You should wait till the Imam finishes both tasleems before you do them. But if someone was to start doing their tasleem after he finishes the first one, it's fine. It's not going to invalidate anything, right? But you should do it after him, technically, after he finishes both, right? Any other questions that we have, guys? Any questions? Any questions? Yes. Is your sujood invalid if you cross your feet and like put the back of your foot on the ground, you mean? Or the top of your foot on the ground? Yeah, that would be invalid. You need to bend the toes and face them to the qibla. Good? All right. Jazakumullah khair, guys. I guess this is a good place to stop, mashallah. We've been going for an hour. Alhamdulillah, we're done with the pillars of prayer and with the recommended acts. This is a big achievement. Now we have a lot of things to get into. We're going to go into the prohibited prayer times. We're going to get into Salat al-Jama'ah. We're going to get into the prayer, the prostration of forgetfulness. We're going to also go into the traveler prayers. A lot of interesting things to come, alhamdulillah. But now we're done with the foundations of it. Jazakumullah khair. Subhanakallahumma hamdik. Nashhadu an la ilaha illa ant. Nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. If you guys have questions or things from the session that you didn't understand, just put it in the WhatsApp group and I'll respond to it, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Books. Hamza. Is Hamza here? Hamza? No, they're here. I think they'll come around for you right now, inshallah. Just give us a moment. Muhammad Arif. You know where Hamza went? Can you see? Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum. How are you? Good? Alhamdulillah. Allah.